Imagine a ship longer than 4 football fields carrying thousands of containers traveling from Asia to America. Without this place, that journey would take thousands of extra kilometers, weeks, would become months. But then humans did something many believed was impossible. They cut a pathway through an entire continent connecting 2 oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. Today, more than 14,000 ships pass through this narrow waterway every year, saving billions of dollars and millions of hours. This place is called the Panama Canal, one of the greatest engineering achievements in human history. But behind this incredible success lies a story of failure, disease, landslides, and the deaths of thousands of workers. How did engineers build one of the world's most important waterways? How do giant ships climb more than 26 meters above sea level without any pumps? And why do experts still call it one of the greatest engineering miracles ever built? To answer that, we must travel back more than 100 years to a jungle where nature fought back against every attempt to change it. Imagine a jungle so dangerous that thousands of workers never returned home, not because of war, but because the jungle itself was killing them. Deadly diseases, relentless rain, massive landslides, and an impossible dream to connect 2 of Earth's greatest oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. For centuries, ships had only one choice: sail around South America, a journey of nearly 13,000 extra kilometers, taking weeks, sometimes months. But then humanity decided to do the impossible: cut a waterway through an entire continent. This project would become the Panama Canal, one of the greatest engineering marvels ever built. Today, more than 14,000 ships pass through it every year, carrying hundreds of billions of dollars worth of cargo. But here's the mystery: how do ships heavier than 200,000 tons climb 26 meters above sea level without engines or giant pumps? Why did the first attempt end in complete disaster? Who solved the impossible problem that defeated thousands of engineers before them? And perhaps the biggest question of all, if building the canal was so dangerous, why did nations keep trying again and again? To answer that, we have to travel back more than 500 years to the moment when one explorer first imagined a shortcut that would change the world forever. The idea wasn't new. Long before modern machines, long before steam engines, even before the United States existed, people dreamed of connecting the Atlantic and the Pacific. As early as the 1500s, Spanish explorers realized something remarkable: the 2 oceans were separated by only a narrow strip of land, the Isthmus of Panama. On a map, it looked so simple: just cut a canal and ships could sail directly across. But reality was very different. Dense jungles, towering mountains, unpredictable rivers, and relentless rain made the land almost impossible to cross. For centuries, the dream remained just that, a dream. Then, in the late 1800s, one man believed he could do it. His name was Ferdinand de Lesseps, the engineer who had already built the Suez Canal. The world called him a genius. If anyone could build a canal through Panama, it was him. Investors poured in millions of dollars. Newspapers called it the greatest project of the century. Thousands of workers arrived, filled with hope. Construction began, but almost immediately, everything started going wrong. Unlike Egypt, Panama wasn't flat desert, it was a living jungle. Rain fell almost every day. Mountains collapsed without warning. Freshly dug earth slid back into the excavation. Weeks of work could disappear in a single night. But the land wasn't the deadliest enemy. Something much smaller was waiting: invisible, silent, deadly mosquitoes. Workers began falling sick one after another: yellow fever, malaria. Entire camps were devastated. Doctors didn't yet understand how these diseases spread. People believed the jungle air was poison. They were wrong. The real killers were flying all around them every day. More workers collapsed. Hospitals overflowed. Families received letters that never brought good news. Thousands lost their lives. Money disappeared. Machines stopped. Hope faded. Finally, after years of failure, the French company went bankrupt. Construction came to a halt. The dream of the Panama Canal seemed dead, many believed no one would ever attempt it again, but history. Other plans, because across the ocean, another nation was watching and they believed the impossible could still be achieved. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States was paying very close attention. American leaders knew whoever controlled a canal between two oceans would control one of the world's most important trade routes. Ships would save thousands of kilometers, goods would arrive faster, navies could move between oceans in days instead of weeks. Opportunity was too important to ignore. In 1904, the United States took over a project, but before any digging could begin, they had to solve the one problem that had defeated the French disease. An American doctor named William Gorgas believed mosquitoes were responsible for yellow fever and malaria. At first, many people laughed at the idea, but Gorgas didn't stop. Swamps were drained, standing water was removed, buildings were sprayed, windows were covered with screens, entire towns were cleaned. Slowly, something incredible started happening. The number of infections began to fall. For the first time, workers could build without living in constant fear of disease. The jungle hadn't changed, the mountains were still there, the rain still poured, but humanity had finally won its first battle. Now, the real challenge could begin. Moving hundreds of millions of cubic meters of earth and rock day after day, steam shovels bit into the mountains, explosives shattered solid rock, massive trains carried away endless loads of dirt. The largest challenge was a place known as Culebra Cut, a narrow passage through the Continental Divide. Engineers had to slice an enormous trench straight through a mountain range. Every time they thought they were making progress, nature fought back. Heavy rains triggered massive landslides. Millions of tons of earth collapsed back into the excavation. Entire weeks, sometimes months of work disappeared. Almost overnight, workers would clear the same section again and again and again. It seemed as though the mountain itself refused to let them pass, but giving up was no longer an option. The world was watching and the engineers kept digging. But even if engineers managed to cut through the mountains, one impossible problem still remained. The Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean are not at the same level. Between them lies the rugged hills of Panama, rising more than 26 meters above sea level. If ships entered a simple canal, they would never reach the other side. So engineers came up with a revolutionary idea. Instead of keeping ships at sea level, why not lift the ships themselves? It sounded impossible. Some of the world's largest vessels weigh more than 200,000 tons, yet engineers designed a system that could raise or lower these giants without engines, without giant cranes, and without pumping water. The answer was locks, gigantic chambers made from steel and concrete, each one long enough to hold an enormous ship. When a vessel entered the first chamber, massive steel gates closed behind it. Then water flowed in, using nothing but gravity. Slowly, the ship rose higher, meter by meter, lock after lock, until it reached the level of Gatun Lake, an enormous artificial lake created specifically for the canal. Ships then sailed across the lake before entering another series of locks. This time, the process worked in reverse. Water flowed out, the ship slowly descended until finally it reached the Pacific Ocean. No pumps, no engines, just gravity, the same force that pulls everything toward Earth. Even today, more than a century later, the original lock system still amazes engineers. Every movement must be perfectly controlled. A single mistake could damage a ship worth hundreds of millions of dollars or shut down one of the world's most important trade routes. But when the final gates opened in 1914, history changed forever. On August 15, 1914, the impossible finally became reality. The first ship officially passed through the Panama Canal, a journey that once required sailing around Cape Horn now took only hours to cross the Isthmus of Panama. The world would never be the same. Suddenly, trade routes were transformed. Ships carrying food, oil, steel, cars, and machinery could travel Between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, far faster than ever before, businesses saved time, countries saved money, global trade accelerated at an incredible pace. The Panama Canal quickly became one of the most important waterways on Earth, but operating the canal was just as impressive as building it. Every ship must reserve a crossing. Experienced pilots board each vessel because even the largest captains are not allowed to navigate the canal alone. Powerful locomotives, known as mules, travel alongside the locks. Their job is not to pull the ships. Instead, they keep these massive vessels perfectly centered, preventing them from striking the concrete walls. Every movement is carefully calculated. Every meter is monitored. Every second matters. Then, as global trade continued to grow, something unexpected happened. Ships became much larger. Container ships kept increasing in size. Many of them could no longer fit through the original locks. The canal that once seemed limitless was reaching its limits once again. Engineers faced an enormous challenge. Should they build an entirely new canal, or could they expand one of the greatest engineering marvels ever built? The answer would lead to one of the biggest infrastructure projects of the 21st century. In 2016, after nearly a decade of construction, the expanded Panama Canal officially opened. New locks, much larger than the originals, allowed a new generation of giant container ships to pass, known as Neo-Panamax vessels. These ships carry nearly 3 times more cargo than many of the originals. The expansion changed global shipping. Once again today, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods pass through the canal every year. Everything from smartphones and cars to food, fuel, and medical supplies travel through this narrow passage. For many countries, the Panama Canal isn't just a shortcut, it's an economic lifeline. But despite its incredible success, the canal faces a new challenge, one that its original builders never imagined. Water. Every time a ship passes through the locks, millions of liters of fresh water flow into the ocean. For more than a century, heavy rainfall refilled the lakes, but today, climate change has altered the pattern. Longer droughts, lower rainfall, and falling water levels have forced authorities to reduce the number of ships allowed to cross. Some vessels wait for days, others must pay millions of dollars for priority access. In some cases, shipping companies have even chosen longer routes rather than waiting. Engineers are now exploring new solutions, water-saving systems, larger reservoirs, and advanced technologies to ensure the canal can continue serving the world for generations to come, because even one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements must continue to evolve. And perhaps the most remarkable thing about the Panama Canal isn't its size or even its engineering, it's what it represents. For centuries, people believed a canal across Panama was impossible. The jungle was too dangerous, the mountains too difficult, the rivers too unpredictable, and the cost too great. Yet, human determination refused to give up. More than 75,000 workers from dozens of nations helped build this engineering masterpiece. Many never returned home. Their sacrifice became part of history. Today, the canal supports nearly 6% of global maritime trade. A single ship can save thousands of kilometers by using this shortcut, saving fuel, time, and millions of dollars. Every crossing is a reminder that engineering doesn't just build structures, it changes the way the entire world works. Even now, more than 100 years later, engineers continue maintaining, upgrading, and protecting this incredible waterway, because if the Panama Canal stopped operating, even for a few days, global supply chains would immediately feel the impact. Factories would wait for raw materials, stores would receive products later, shipping costs would rise, the entire world would notice. That's the true power of great engineering, not just building something extraordinary, but creating a system. The world cannot live without the Panama Canal. Proves that impossible ideas can become reality when vision, science, and determination worked together more than a century later, it still stands as one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements, a masterpiece carved through a continent connecting two oceans, changing global trade and reminding us that sometimes the greatest shortcuts are the hardest to build. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe to RailForge, because every week we uncover the world's greatest engineering marvels, one incredible story at a time. Until next time, stay curious.